Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. It's our second in our Insights and METS webinar series. I'm Michael Beaton. I'm the WA METS Digital Mining Export Hub lead, and it's great to host you today for our webinar, Growth Marketing for METS. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm hosting this webinar from the lands of the Whadjuk people. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians on the various lands on which you all work today, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people attending this webinar. For today's session, we're led by Dave Yates, Principal at Rethink Mining. Dave has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to growth marketing for METS and has coached over 300 business leaders nationally in the METS sector. If you've got any questions for Dave today, we can answer them at the end of today's session. And please put all your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Before I hand over to Dave, I'd just like to take a moment to introduce you to the WA METS Digital Mining Export Hub for those non-members that are currently available. So WA METS Digital Mining Export Hub is a joint federal and state government funded project focused on METS companies in the METS sector. It's about building a community. It's about sharing knowledge. It's about sharing resources. It's more or less just trying to align to your strategy that you have a focus of expanding your markets, which could be nationally, but also overseas. And at the same time, give you insights into the digital transformation of mining here in Australia and also globally. The way that we're doing it is through one-on-one mentoring. We're having various programs, which I'll show you some of the ones coming up in the next few months. We've got some global supply chain opportunities, networking opportunities. We're focused in the regions in Kalgoorlie, Karratha, Newman, Port Hedland, Bunbury, Peel. So we go all the way around WA, but also in the metro area in Perth as well. Next slide, Dave. And as you can see, in the duration of this project with the hub, we've certainly got a number of stakeholders, whether they be federal, whether they be part of the state government, but also regionally, that have certainly been supporting us. Next one. So coming up, we've got more on our Insights of METS webinar series. We actually have another program over in Victoria aligned to what we do. And in May and June, they're going to have a couple of webinars, which we'll release shortly. We have an international market development program, which is focused on Indonesia. We've got some in-country consultants in Indonesia. So if you've ever wanted your business, your product or service to actually get into Indonesia, the in-country consultants will work with you and give you an understanding of various pathways to align to your strategy to complement what you're currently doing. Everything that I'm showing you at the moment and joining the hub is free. Certainly, if you want to explore it further, please get in contact. Also, last year, we ran an 8-week program on export growth. During that time, you get allocated a mentor. And over those 8 weeks, you work with the mentor. You get insights from industry leaders and experts, such as Dave, on what your product and service is doing. How does it, how can you align it and get it ready for export? And at the same time, in week 8, you sit down with, or you get to pitch to tier ones, miners, and you get some feedback on, what you've learnt over that 6 to 8 week period. And we also have various regional events. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dave Yates, and over to you, Dave.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. My name's Dave Yates. I have founded a company called Rethink Mining. And one of the things I'm interested in doing is trying to help mining and METS companies understand, the changing nature of communication. If you're a mining company trying to tell the world that you're doing something responsible or you're making a difference, the expectations on you are very different. And so I've been helping organizations look at how they change their story or how they might go about changing some of the commitments they're making. And for METS companies, I've been working for almost half a decade now on repositioning and helping METS companies to grow. And that's really the focus of the presentation today, is to focus on growth. So what am I talking about today? Really, the focus of this webinar is to briefly cover over kind of the core tenets of growth marketing, and giving you something you can tangibly take away and use in your own time as you start to think about what growth marketing might look to you. And hopefully at the end of this process, you can pick holes in your own marketing, and you can actually say, that's the bit we're missing. That's the bit we haven't thought enough about, or that's the kind of organization we need to go and talk to or utilize or use. So what do I mean by growth marketing? Well, principally, it's about telling the world about what you do. It's about convincing them to buy something, and it's about following up with them efficiently and effectively, and making things work in that way. My hope is that I can unpack that a little bit for you today, and then we'll finish up the end of this session with some Q&A as well. So I'll jump through the content as quickly as I can, and then from there we can jump into that Q&A. So telling the world about what you do is largely made up of 4 outcomes and 4 activities. And we're going to go through each of those 8 items in as much detail as I can fit into a 10-minute talk on marketing. But in addition to that, I'm also going to talk about how we should be tying them together to get the best bang for your buck. If you're a METS company, you're looking to try and get into either a big mining house or another METS company as a supplier, and the job there is to get noticed, get considered, and hopefully convert a potential customer and start to make revenue out of them. So is marketing a bit of a predatory game? Yes, it is. That's kind of the point. You're out there hunting. You're looking for places to send your sales reps to. And you're also looking for places to make sure that should you get in there, people have heard about you, people feel comfortable and confident in what you do, and they're not putting up unnecessary barriers to sales conversations when you get in there. And that's really the focus of what I want to share with you today. Is there is a way to tie together the outcomes and the activities to get the best possible bang for your buck. So let's start with the 4 outcomes. The 4 outcomes are awareness, consideration, conversion, and retargeting. What do I mean by that? Awareness is telling strangers that you exist. It's people becoming aware of your product or your service, of what it is you have to offer the world, or even just your brand. Each of these, and I'll get into this a little bit later, each of these is in a way a little bit of a meta model. It kind of applies to anything that you need to market, whether that's a service or a product or a brand. You can be marketing for awareness of multiple things at once. But the focus is really understanding, okay, do strangers know you or this thing or your brand? Do they know it exists? Once they know it exists, are they considering it for their needs? And that's more when you get into the value proposition work of actually going, is this something they really want? Is this something that would make a difference to them? And is it going to solve their problem? And then once you've allowed them to consider, the job is to convert. And that's really where the relationship between marketing and sales kicks in, is to say, right, I know you're thinking about this product. How do I get you across the line? What needs to happen to convert? And marketing has a role to play in this, and I'll cover off with that today. But principally, this is a handshake deal at the conversion stage with sales reps and with business development managers to make sure that you can close the deal. And that's where that moment of truth sits, to say, okay, how do we make sure that we can get that customer in the door? And then whether it's yes or no at the sales point, at that moment of truth, we still need to retarget. We still need to follow up. We still need to upsell or on-sell or resell. It could be that, they didn't buy it for a particular reason, and we've managed to solve that problem. And it's now reapproaching that same customer and saying, do you still have the same need? Is that something we can do? So the retargeting becomes quite useful, but it can also be an enormous waste of money if we're doing things a little bit inefficiently. I don't know how many people on the call have ever bought something on an online store and then been remarketed to with banner ads and things that follow you around the internet with the very thing you just bought, meaning you don't need to buy it again. Why on earth would we need to spend any money marketing to you with the same product? So there are efficient ways and there are inefficient ways to market. And that's some of what I want to talk about today. They're the 4 outcomes: awareness, strangers know you exist; consideration, strangers are no longer strangers; conversion, that moment of truth, that buying decision; and then the follow-up, the on-sell, the resell, the retargeting that's involved in following up. Now, you want lots of people at the top of that funnel, the awareness funnel. You want people who will one day be your customers. You want people who are not your customers, but may one day work for your customers. You want a lot of people to be aware you exist. In the consideration game, it's people you know could be a customer. And so that funnel gets a little smaller. And then at the conversion stage, it's really around qualified leads and people who are in a buying decision or a buying moment, or have the decision-making power to make that decision as well. Again, that's why that handshake exists with sales. Then we move into the 4 activities. Now, it's also represented as a funnel because we've got lots of reach and also lots of dollars at this particular end of town. So you've got big marketing, big advertising, and you're earning reputation. So you're buying advertising at the top, you're earning reputation in the middle, and you are owning assets down the bottom towards that moment of truth. We'll go through that list in a little bit more detail. And then you've got automations that help you with your follow-up and some of that work we were talking about before. Now, the funnel is wide at the top because, one, that reach that you need to get to the most people, but it's also wide because the dollars are big. You're going to be spending significant amounts of money to make advertising, board advertising and media and trade shows and all the rest of it effective. Moving down to earning reputation, you can get away with this for free, but it's going to take a huge amount of your internal resources. It's going to, may not cost you cash, but it's going to cost you a lot of time. It's going to cost you a lot of your teams. And so the resource count is still there and it's still relatively costly. And then the owning assets piece is really where most small businesses start. And that's where we're developing our own perspectives and our own work. That's really where the branding, the website, things like that come into it. It's where our blogs and our SEO type work. And you can get away with a lot in just owning your own assets in today's market. And so that's a great place to start, but it's also not necessarily going to bring new customers in the door. You're just going to be working off of word of mouth. You're going to have great conversion tools available to you when word of mouth comes in the door, which is in fact an earned reputation, one step up that particular funnel. So hopefully by seeing how these tie together today, I can make it help make marketing, and in particular growth marketing, a little bit more easier to understand. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to put it into a simple matrix for us all. This simple matrix simply puts those 4 axes against each other and says, you can buy awareness, consideration, conversion, and targeting. You can earn awareness, consideration, conversion, and targeting. You can own it and you can automate it. The question becomes, what's the best bang for buck in that particular area? And this is where it starts to become quite useful and quite interesting. If you want the best bang for your buck, ideally, you want to be buying awareness, you want to be earning consideration, you want to be owning conversion, and then you want to be automating retargeting. There are 2 reasons for this. One is the requisite effort is matched. Buying awareness is much easier to buy awareness than it is to earn it or own it. It is much easier to earn consideration than it is to buy it or own it. It is much easier to own the conversion and the sales process than it is to buy the sales process. There are ways to do it, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but it is much easier to do it down that end. And again, it's much easier to automate retargeting than it is to do it one-on-one. If you've ever had to follow up a bunch of leads you had at a trade show and you've had a list full of people you're going to call, that kind of retargeting and following up can be actually quite labor intensive and quite costly as well. So this is the whole process. And this process, particularly for a small business, a service company, a product focused company, is the same no matter whether you're talking about brand and your company trademark and its values and its story and its heritage, whether you're talking about a product or a service and its individual unit sale or based on its price or its value proposition. And if it's a campaign. So what do I mean by a campaign? A periodic collection of products. So it's not just the brand story. It's not just a set price or a set product value proposition, but we've managed to weave that into a campaign we can take to market. It might be the launch of a new product. It might be a particular sale. Typical campaigns you'll see on TV all the time are things like an end of financial year campaign, or a federal budget campaign, or a Christmas campaign, or something like that. It has themes to it, and it's backed up by that kind of work. So to dive a little bit deeper, for the purposes of this webinar, what do we mean when we say buying awareness? What are we trying to do? I've got a photo of John Wick 3 on the side of a bus here, because one of the best ways you can see buying awareness is actually in the film and television industry, because all they want you to know is that their movie exists. And so they're buying real estate. By real estate, I mean visible things on the sides of buildings and buses and whatnot, to try and get you to know that this particular thing exists. From there, they don't really mind about the conversion experience because their local retailers are looking after that. Their job is simply awareness. So you're talking in your context about trade shows, about billboards and posters. You're talking about sponsorships of different companies or different associations, trade associations. You're talking about advertisements and video placements, and even social media advertising and Google AdWords. You're talking about interrupting a train of thought and interrupting a visual, so to speak, by putting something else in front of someone and saying, did you know this exists? A full page ad spread in a publication, or an advertisement on YouTube, or an AdWord when someone Googles a particular phrase. So when you're buying awareness, you're paying for the privilege of interrupting someone's train of thought and presenting an alternative to them. To get help in this space, you're looking to try and talk to digital agencies, advertising agencies. You're looking to talk to local associations and local clubs, trying to get visibility in front of your prime audience. It's not necessarily about buying a bus ad. That's what a movie would do, because it's about hitting the general public. In your particular case, you're looking to hone in on who's my ideal customer, where do they gather, and how do I interrupt them at their gathering, whether that's through a sponsorship, a speakership, or even some kind of advertising. So that's buying awareness. Earning consideration. When you're considering, okay, I want to go to Italy and I want to stay on the Amalfi Coast. Cool. What do I need to do to consider something? Well, I want to see all the available hotels and I want to choose one. So what am I going to do? I'm probably going to read the reviews. Earning consideration is one of the best and most powerful, and probably the most cost-effective way to climb up out of just simply having your own website and doing your own social media. Earning that reputation either through reviews or through awards or through referrals is the best way. Now, most people will start by saying, I build a quality product. I just get everything through word of mouth. That's all I need. And that's absolutely fair enough. You can build an entire business on simply word of mouth alone. But if you want to scale that and get it to a bit of a bigger perspective, then you're going to move from word of mouth into documented word of mouth. You're going to have 5-star reviews. You're going to have quotes. You're going to be able to publish those quotes in some of your documentation or your sales proposals. You can have referrals. You're going to have maybe even have an affiliate system where referrals get a kickback or something like that. Your social media following falls into this. You've earned a following for a reason. You're providing value online for a reason. A lot of this earning consideration stuff actually has a lot more to do with sweat of the brow than handing over cash. You've just got to do the work to get the job. Now, it's either looking after clients when you get them, or it's following up once you've delivered the product, or it's actually just delivering a fantastic product that people want to tell their friends about. Any of those pieces are going to be helpful. What do you need to make this work for you? A PR agency, having a journalist nearby or a copywriter nearby, even just customers and vendors who can share your story and put it through their words or their perspective can be enormously helpful in describing what it's like to work with you without you having to say it yourself. And what's old is always new again. Word of mouth hasn't changed. It's still the primary way we refer business, whether that's on social media or in normal ways of doing business. And I think if you were to start, and particularly thinking about this from an export point of view, if you were to start thinking about entering a new market, a PR firm would be one of the first things I'd recommend you starting to do, because of the relationship between cost versus sweat of the brow, and not having to pay through the nose for awareness. You can probably get some of that awareness and even earn some consideration just by going through that process alone. The next one is owning conversion. This is where your branding and your website lives. This is your brochures, your videos, your photos, your illustrations, everything that makes you look and feel professional. This is the thing that most people in a small business love to do themselves or love to get done, because it makes the business feel real. Kogan's a fantastic example of this, because they own their homepage and they do a huge amount of selling in their own owned environment. You get on that homepage and they can send you pretty much anywhere they want. The job there is an expert command of photography, of value proposition design, and of video where possible. And you absolutely want to make sure that your website can do its job and get people where they need to go. So this is really about owning your own media and having your own turf absolutely seamless, and being able to tell your own stories and publish your own content, and even share that content on social media gives you an enormous amount of credibility online just with owning your own media. But owning your own media and having your own conversion puts all the responsibility for being known on your sales staff. So making sure you don't stay here and that you climb back up the ladder looking at earning consideration and even buying some awareness to send people down through that funnel is really important. Businesses don't live on just owning conversion alone. You're going to have to find a way to find new customers somewhere. So talking to strategists, talking to copywriters, talking to people who can plan this out for you and get the right balance is incredibly important. And then once you've got the people through that moment of truth, whether they've said yes or no, you want to automate some form of retargeting. So for example, when people say no, one of the things they do is they leave something behind in a cart. And if you've ever gotten an email saying, "We noticed you've left something behind in your cart," that's an automated trigger that says, you tried something, you decided you didn't want it. Can we help you? You may have forgotten. Is there something we can do? You don't need to follow that up as an individual. You can simply create a system to look after this. You can also create systems to say, someone filled out a contact form. I'm going to do a drip feed campaign and send them an email every month for 3 months just to check in, or offer some discounts or offer some extra advice or something like that. It's also if they have bought something, and you can see this online and offline, taking what they've said yes to and actually upselling as a part of the next steps process, and saying, well, you've bought in this far. Did you know if you add a little bit more, we can get a whole lot more value out of the product you've just spent all this money on? So there's upselling and cross-selling opportunities as a part of the retargeting package in this as well. You really want to make sure that this is as automated as possible. You don't necessarily have to make sure that hands touch this bit. You can actually follow up with an automated email that says, this person bought a specific product. Whether it was online or not, you can just mark someone. If you've built the right system, you can mark someone as having bought a particular product, and 3 days later, it'll fire off an offer email with an upsell. Or they didn't buy it, they chose no. We'll run a drip feed campaign to show them why they made a mistake and didn't buy it. So there's all sorts of different ways you can do it. Some are more spammy than others, but there's absolutely ways you can get into this and make it happen. So websites, how do they fit into all this? This is where things get a little bit more interesting. We want to make sure we're linking ads to the website at the top of the funnel. And then we want our links, our backlinks, our reviews, our case studies to earn us some of our reputation. We want to publish that reputation. And then we want to own assets inside of this system with our homepage, our videos, our downloadable brochures and PDFs. And really our marketing automations are going to sit powered by our website. So our website sits at every level of this whole thing. Now, that's about all I've got to get over today because we're running out of time. But what I have done is pulled this all together onto a placemat that you can download on my website. So www.rethinkmining.com. You can jump in on there. There's a bit where it's all yellow text and you can see a download button there to download the the bang for buck marketing template. The key piece I want you to take from here is actually the call to action is you build it from right to left, and then you market from left to right. So people come in through bought media, earned and owned, but you should be building by starting with your owned media and your website, doing whatever automation you feel comfortable with, and then earning some media. And once you've got that, then spend some money on some bought media. And that's going to get you into the right frame and get you the biggest bang for your buck out of your marketing in terms of growing your company. Questions? Let's stop sharing while we cut to questions.
Thanks, Dave. There was certainly a lot we certainly packed into a short period of time. So I think, as Dave said, just everyone, go to his website and have a look at that A3, and I'm sure it's going to answer a lot for you. And get in contact with yourself using maybe even your QR code that you got on the screen.
Yeah. Absolutely. Feel free to reach out.
We've got a question, Sema. Dave, what about localization and languages? Where does that fit in?
Yeah, I think it fits in at every stage, but I would be working on it in the same way that you build out. So start with your owned media and your brochures, get them translated properly. Make sure that there's someone consulting, and it's not just translation, it's localization. When you say this, does it mean the same thing when you say it in a different country, or are you going to put your foot in your mouth at the same time? So getting localization support is going to be really important. That can potentially be where even a PR firm can be quite helpful in that space, is when I say this, does it actually make sense? So translation and PR support in a new market with a different language can be incredibly important. But yes, focus on owned media and getting that stuff translated and localized. And then from there, move to earned and bought media and translating that and localizing that as you go.
Okay, Sheldon's using the chat function, but what advice do you have for marketers convincing those up the chain to invest in marketing activities?
Yeah, good question. I think if someone's come from a background of pretty heavy sales, probably two things. One is we need to recognize that we're post-COVID and an enormous amount of work is being done from home now. So the idea of pressing the flesh and getting out there and shaking hands is not like it used to be, and even more so post-COVID. So actually just spending the money to be visible to other people and spending the money to do the sweat of the brow stuff to get recognized is really important. And I think even recognizing the simple things like doing the work to convince your boss that photos are really important, or a video on site of a client is really important, can feel really contrived and like uncomfortable. But my goodness, you come home with a video of everything you just sold at your client and you give that to your boss, he'll fall off his chair, because now we've got something we can demonstrate, not just talk about, but demonstrate this is what we do and this is how good it is at doing what you need it to do. So what advice do I have? I think insist and probably do the marketing yourself. Help them be aware of what it would do. Help earn the consideration in that space. Here's what it's happened elsewhere. This is what it would do. This is what people have found when we did do it. And then try and see if you can't get the sell on.
Last question. What social media should METS companies be focusing on?
It's a great question. I think it depends on your market. So if you have a white collar market, if you're talking to the mining houses and you're trying to get in with, let's say, a mining engineer or a geologist, then principally I'd be sending you to LinkedIn, because that's where you're going to have a buying decision. However, this whole process is really interesting, because whilst someone might be insisting we buy something from head office, it could actually be that the operator is the one that's got to sign the check, or at least vet that this is what we're going to use, because they may end up being the one who uses it. And then it's probably someone at the asset in the procurement division that's got to do the buying. So there's multiple people. So actually setting yourself up, and again, going back to the owned media, setting yourself up with PDFs you can send so that other people can sell on your behalf is a really important trick to make sure you've got that in the sales repertoire. And then to go back to social media and say, right, who am I trying to hit? It might be white collar, but it might actually be operators on site who are potentially even blue collar workers. How do I get to them? And all of a sudden, we're seeing this enormous uptick of of use, particularly in people in operational roles under 35 years of age in TikTok and in Instagram. So I wouldn't discount those popular networks as a place to not only advertise to, but actually find influencers. There are pretty significant influencers in the mining space on TikTok right now. And even though they are operators, they would potentially have audiences across the spectrum in the mining space and be worth thinking about whether or not they would be useful to you as well. So how would I use it? I would be thinking about advertising and influencers, and I would be thinking about your audience and how you would find them. But don't discount things like TikTok and Instagram, because your audience are there and they are using it.
One final one, YouTube, is that social media?
YouTube is not really social media, not in the same sense of how we might use, say, Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn for that matter. YouTube's more becoming a repository of video content that has an algorithmic quality to it, but we don't get on YouTube and doom scroll for 40 minutes. We sit in front of YouTube and we look for things. So it's more a categorized database of video that recommends other videos. So it's a great place to host your videos. It's a great place to link to. And you can obviously post videos from YouTube onto different social media networks. So it's good to use, but I would consider YouTube as owned media rather than anything earned and socially driven.
Dave, thanks very much for your time. We're constricted by time as usual, but awesome. Again, please reach out via his website, have a go at his QR code or on LinkedIn. Thank you all for everyone for attending today. Our next series of webinars will be through the Victoria METS Hub. They'll be in May and June, and we'll reach out to you and also look on the Austmine website under the hubs for the details of those events. But thank you all for attending today, and thank you, Dave.
Thank you very much. Cheers.